Imagine a train that runs on nothing you have ever seen before. For decades, engineers told us such a thing was impossible. Yet in the heart of Africa, a revolutionary self-powered train is rewriting every rule of conventional transportation. It challenges physics as we thought we knew it. It challenges economics as we thought we understood them. And most importantly, it challenges the idea that progress can only come from wealthy nations in the West or East. This train, a marvel of African ingenuity, is fueled by no coal, no diesel, and not even traditional electricity from overhead wires. Instead, it draws its strength from a secret technology hidden deep within its design. The world has whispered about it, skeptics have dismissed it, but today, the secret is no longer hidden. The technology behind Africa's self-powered train has been revealed, and it is nothing short of groundbreaking. To understand why this train matters, we must first step back and look at the global energy crisis. The world is still deeply dependent on fossil fuels to power transportation. Trains, planes, ships, trucks, nearly every heavy transport vehicle relies on burning something. This reliance drains economies, fuels wars over oil, and pours billions of tons of carbon into the atmosphere each year. Every time a diesel locomotive roars to life, black smoke rises into the sky, silently worsening climate change. The planet is heating, glaciers are melting, and weather patterns are becoming more violent. Yet even as nations scramble to find alternatives, the solutions offered, like electric trains powered by external grids, still demand enormous amounts of energy. And in many parts of the world, especially across Africa, the grid itself is weak, unreliable, or non-existent. That means traditional electrification of trains is almost impossible in those regions. So the question became clear: how can Africa, a continent often painted as struggling with infrastructure, leapfrog ahead into the future of transportation? The answer was bold, surprising, and revolutionary. Instead of importing expensive locomotives or waiting decades for full electrification, engineers in Africa built something the world said could not exist: a train that powers itself, a train that recycles its own energy, a train that operates without external fuel sources, forever changing how we think about rail. The heart of this miracle lies in what is being called kinetic harvest technology. This is not a science fiction term, but a real-world engineering breakthrough. The principle is deceptively simple. Every moving object has energy, especially something as massive as a train. Traditional trains waste enormous amounts of energy when they brake, with heat and friction devouring the momentum. But the African self-powered train flips this waste into opportunity. When the train slows, instead of wasting that energy, it captures it. The braking system itself doubles as a generator, harvesting the kinetic force that would otherwise disappear into thin air. That captured energy is then stored in ultra-modern systems, advanced batteries and supercapacitors designed to absorb massive bursts of power in seconds. These energy banks then feed the stored electricity back into the train's propulsion system. The result is a cycle. Movement generates energy, slowing regenerates power, and the train feeds itself with its own motion. But skeptics ask, doesn't it lose energy over time? The answer lies in efficiency. The train is designed to minimize resistance, reduce drag, and capture more energy than it loses. Add to that solar panels integrated into the roof and auxiliary energy harvested from regenerative infrastructure at stations, and suddenly the train's energy loop becomes self-sufficient. This is not perpetual motion in the fantasy sense, but a masterclass in using every drop of available power. The engineers behind this train refuse to waste anything. Every braking stop, every downhill slope, every pause is an opportunity to recharge. The design makes the train smarter with every mile traveled. This fusion of regenerative braking, energy storage, and kinetic harvesting forms the invisible engine of Africa's self-powered train. But the brilliance does not stop with the technology inside the locomotive. The entire ecosystem supporting this train has been carefully engineered for resilience. At the stations, small renewable grids, solar, wind, and in some cases hydro, feed auxiliary energy into the network. This creates a safety net, ensuring the train always starts its journey with reserves topped up. Once on the move, however, it largely powers itself, requiring little to no external input. Even the design of the carriages reflects efficiency, with lighter materials and aerodynamic shapes cutting resistance further. And perhaps the most underrated part of the system is its modularity. The train can be reconfigured depending on its mission, if it's carrying heavy cargo across flat terrain, more energy storage modules can be added. If it's transporting passengers across steep gradients, kinetic systems can be optimized for maximum regeneration on downhill sections. This flexibility means the same basic design can work in deserts, mountains, forests, or plains. The adaptability makes it not just an African solution, but a global one. And behind this train is not one genius or one corporation, but a collective of African engineers, innovators, and local communities working together. International partners contributed knowledge and components, but the vision, assembly, and first deployments were proudly African. This matters because it shifts the narrative. For too long, Africa has been seen only as a consumer of global technology. Now, it is the birthplace of an innovation that could reshape global transportation, and the world is paying attention. Operational footage of the train has already left international observers stunned. The sleek locomotive glides down tracks with barely a whisper, hauling cargo with no plumes of smoke and no overhead wires. Villagers and city dwellers alike stand in awe as this futuristic machine quietly moves through landscapes once dominated by noisy diesel trains. The efficiency is undeniable. Field tests show the self-powered train consumes less than a fraction of the energy of its diesel counterpart. Cargo delivery times are faster because refueling stops are eliminated. Maintenance costs are dramatically lower because there are fewer moving parts to wear down. And perhaps most importantly, the cost per kilometer traveled is slashed to historic lows. This has enormous implications for African economies. For decades, nations have spent billions importing diesel fuel for trains and trucks. This money drained treasuries and made transportation costs unbearable for businesses. But with self-powered trains, fuel imports drop to near zero. That means more money stays in African economies. Trade routes suddenly become cheaper and more accessible. Farmers can move crops to markets at lower prices. Mines can transport minerals without burning millions of dollars in fuel. And new jobs open up in manufacturing, operating, and maintaining this new fleet of trains. It is not an exaggeration to say this innovation could transform entire economies. But beyond the economic impact lies an even greater story, the environmental one. Carbon emissions from African rail networks could plummet overnight. Air pollution along train corridors could vanish. Noise pollution drops as the train glides almost silently compared to the roaring engines of diesel locomotives. This means cleaner cities, healthier communities, and a measurable step toward climate goals. And unlike solutions that require decades to roll out, this train is already here. It is already running. It is already proving itself in real-world conditions. The global implications are staggering. If Africa can pioneer and deploy this at scale, what is stopping Europe, Asia, or the Americas from doing the same? Why should coal-burning locomotives still exist in the 21st century? Why should electric trains still depend on massive, expensive national grids when energy can be harvested on board? This African solution could become a global standard. Yet challenges remain. Scaling production of the trains requires investment, factories, and global supply chains. There will be resistance from industries that profit from selling diesel and building power-hungry rail systems. There will be skepticism from scientists who still cannot believe Africa pulled this off first. But history shows that when a breakthrough works, the world eventually accepts it. The Wright brothers were mocked before the plane took off. Tesla was doubted before electric cars began outselling gasoline ones. And now Africa is at the dawn of its own technological revolution in transportation. This train is more than steel and wires. It is a symbol. A symbol of what happens when necessity meets innovation. A symbol of what happens when communities refuse to be limited by the old rules of engineering. And a symbol of Africa stepping forward as a leader, not a follower, in solving global problems. For viewers watching today, this is more than just a story about trains. It is a call to imagine what else is possible. If trains can power themselves, why not ships? Why not planes? Why not entire cities that recycle and harvest their own energy in closed loops of sustainability? The African self-powered train is proof that the impossible can become possible, and it challenges every one of us to stop thinking in limits and start thinking in cycles. Energy wasted is opportunity lost. Energy captured is opportunity gained. This philosophy, embodied in steel wheels rolling across African tracks, may be the secret to a sustainable future. And it all began with a train that dared to defy the laws of convention. A train born in Africa for Africa, but destined for the world. So, next time someone tells you something cannot be done, remember the self-powered train. Remember that Africa was the first to make it real. And remember that the impossible only stays impossible until someone builds it. Because as this train proves, the future of transportation is not waiting. It is already here. It is already moving. And it is unstoppable.